I am Tirsah Holder James, a doctoral student in organizational leadership and behavioral health at Grand Canyon University. I'm dedicated to specialist work in disaster resilience leadership. My research topic is a collaborative approach to building community resilience as part of disaster preparedness planning. The adverse effects of disasters and humanitarian crises can cause widespread human, material, economic, or environmental loss, which can exceed the capacity of the affected population or community's resources. Considering natural hazards, data from 2020 highlighted the impact of disasters having affected approximately 100 million people, resulting in 15,082 deaths and an estimated $190 billion in global economic losses. Vulnerable populations are at a higher risk of experiencing human, material, economic, or environmental loss. Globally, there is a focus on developing resilience policies. Community resilience is defined as the capacity of a community to withstand the impacts of a major crisis through demonstration of the capacity to adapt and grow while minimizing causalities, preserving quality of life at a fair level for all its citizens, and maintaining its established values and identity. The current global attention to disaster resilience reflects the dutiful undertaking of reducing disaster impacts and strengthening communities. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030 is the first global policy framework of the United Nations post-2015 agenda. The Sendai Framework integrated a greater emphasis on people's mental and physical health, resilience, and well-being into the policy development process as part of its disaster risk reduction mandate. The UN's Sendai Framework approach encourages the development of resilience policies, incorporating notions of mitigation, preparedness, resistance, and recovery to deal with future hazards. Community intervention programs were found to be beneficial in building resilience, thereby reducing the severe impact of disasters on communities and individuals. The research literature presents no interventions or approaches, though, that outline how individual communities can mitigate disaster preparedness. More specifically, no clear approach was provided that outlined how to build resilience in communities in Trinidad and Tobago. There is a need, therefore, to understand how interventions can improve disaster resilience. Qualitative research would help create empirically sound models for developing interventions that build disaster resilience. Several studies supported cross-sector collaboration, including engagement with community-based organizations. Feedback from community leaders is required to address structural issues in planning response interventions and implementing resilience strategies. In Trinidad and Tobago, implementing community disaster resilience strategies through the coordinated and integrated planning of community corporations alongside local and national disaster preparedness agencies can potentially address the need for collaboration. The involvement of local community stakeholders, including leaders from community-based organizations, is integral for developing support programs geared at building community resilience. Connecting with community-based organizations requires community engagement fostered through cross-sector collaboration, planning, and preparation. Community-based organizations are known to conduct unique disaster plans to reduce vulnerability and increase community resilience. But the value of their efforts is not fully understood. The research literature lacks evidence of a structured approach to disaster intervention methods implemented by community-based organizations. Generalized processes from one group may not be adaptable for other groups based on cultural norms and values. The success of disaster preparedness planning for a given population depends on an evidence-based, collaborative approach to understanding disaster risk and vulnerability and implementing resilience strategies. Further research is needed to explore an evidence-based collaborative approach to building community resilience as part of disaster preparedness planning, which addresses structural concerns through cross-sector collaboration and engagement with leaders of community-based organizations. Therefore, the purpose of this study is to explore a collaborative approach to building community resilience towards improved disaster preparedness planning for Trinidad and Tobago. Data would be gathered from 30 emergency response leaders working within community-based organizations that provide safety-based, religious, educational, child and family promoting, health-based, or voluntary services alongside emergency response services to the Tobago community. I am requesting that your organization or group authorize the participation of your employees or representatives. This authorization will allow me to conduct the following research activities: to obtain from the organization a list of names and contact information of employees or designees in the role of emergency response leaders recruited as potential participants, to contact potential participants and provide them with information about the study, an invitation to volunteer, the confidentiality policy, a link to the informed consent form, and a link to the demographic questionnaire, to retrieve each volunteer's signed informed consent form and a completed demographic questionnaire, to select 1 to 3 volunteers that meet the study criteria from among the organization's consenting volunteers, to provide optional participation in either a one-to-one interview with me, Tirsah, on Zoom for up to 60 minutes or a focus group discussion with me and 4 to 6 emergency response leaders on Zoom for up to 60 minutes. Let me be clear. Participants will only need to select one type of meeting, either a one-to-one meeting with me or a focus group with other emergency response leaders. The participants in this study must meet the following criteria. They must be between 18 to 68 years old. They must work with a community-based organization or group that operates locally in Trinidad and Tobago, providing regular, safety-based, religious, educational, child and family promoting, health-based, or voluntary services alongside emergency response services to the Tobago community. They must work full-time or part-time as an emergency response leader, manager, director, supervisor, or other key emergency response personnel, or they must have been designated by the organization or group to lead emergency response activities. They must also be willing to participate in this study voluntarily. The results of this study can inform future research on collaborative approaches for building community disaster resilience. A participatory approach involving multi-sector collaboration among emergency response leaders and organizations that provide community-based services would consider the needs of all citizens and the capacity for providing services that reduce vulnerability. Thus, this study will define strategies for developing collaborative approaches to enhance disaster preparedness planning. This research also advances the current knowledge and understanding of the research literature about strategies for building community resilience. Findings will indicate applicable interventions for improved community disaster resilience in the local setting of Trinidad and Tobago, specifically in the Tobago context, with implications for Trinidad and other neighboring Caribbean communities. Inferences would be drawn about the cultural application when planning community-based resilience building interventions to expand the discussion in the literature about addressing structural, contextual, and cultural relevance. The research will provide evidence-based conclusions to inform planning and guide policy development for disaster mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Thank you for your interest and thank you for your time.